Whatever Jesus says about the world is what I say about the world. If Jesus says it's sin, I say it's sin, even sometimes when I don't understand it. If Jesus says it, I adopt it. Paul, going through life, having that worldview, of course he's going to be executed. Of course he's going to become public enemy number one. And if you have that worldview, someday you may too. Today, this sort of mob mentality is more rampant, I think, than in any other generation before us. In our anti-truth, media-driven culture, we're seeing this everywhere. How do we know? Well, I can give you one example. Our society here in America is run by consumerism. If you're younger and you've never heard that word before, it means simply, if you're not buying stuff, they're going to figure out a way to make sure you start buying stuff. Because that's what runs this country, consumerism. Consumerism only works because human beings are so easily programmed to follow each other in herds as instinctual steps to make sure we don't feel left out. If everybody else has that, I kind of need to have it too because I don't want to be the only one. We see it in our teenagers immediately. Adults are just as bad. That's what spins the wheels of our society, herd mentality. Whenever an individual stands out against the mob value system, that person becomes a threat to the shared interest of the masses. The Apostle Paul was such a person. Here's why. Because the way that the Apostle Paul saw the world was the way that Jesus saw the world. And the values of Jesus Christ came from God the Father. He came with a completely different mission and a completely different set of values to carry out that mission. And so Paul, now that he's adopted the same value system as heaven, and now he's in front of a mob whose value system is completely different, and he starts pressing on those triggers in them, get rid of this guy! Same thing as him. And same thing for you. Unless you conform and your value systems start to become the value system of the world. And God help you if that happens. We, as Christians, we have, listen to me, one lens through which we see and understand our world. We see and say about the world whatever he says about the world. That's what makes us Christ followers. As they were seeking to kill him, word came to the tribune of the cohort that all Jerusalem was in confusion. He at once took soldiers and centurions and ran down to them, and when they saw the tribune and the soldiers, they stopped beating Paul. They didn't want to get arrested too. Then the tribune came up and arrested him and ordered him to be bound with 2 chains, just like it was prophesied in the last chapter. He inquired who he was and what he had done. Paul, or whoever you are, what have you done to deserve such a thing? You getting it? Some in the crowd were shouting one thing, some another, and he couldn't learn the facts because of the uproar. He ordered him to be brought into the barracks. When he came to the steps, Paul actually had to be carried by the soldiers because of the violence of the crowd. The mob of the people followed, crying out, "Away with him!" which means kill him. As Paul was about to be brought into the barracks, he said to the tribune, "May I say something to you?" He was just beaten, and he wants to talk. What do you think he might want to say? Look at this. "May I say something to you?" And he said, "Do you know Greek?" Now the tribune answers him back, "Wait a second. I thought you were the Egyptian who recently stirred up a revolt and led the 4,000 men of the assassins into the wilderness." Paul replied, "No, I'm a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of no obscure city. I beg you, permit me to speak to the people." Would you care about speaking to the people who just beat you up? He does. Did you know that in the Gospels, there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 33 accusations made against Jesus? 33 accusations. You're a this. You're in league with Satan. There's 33 of these. I just want to show you 4. Look at these on the screen. They accused him of having fellowship with tax collectors and sinners. They accused him of working on the Sabbath. They accused him of healing on the Sabbath. They accused him of making false claims about his deity. There's 33 of these different ones. When he was accused, he would often try to clarify their confusion. And you know how the master did it? He asked questions. So he did it. He asked questions to help them come to discover the truth. He would ask pointed questions. And when he did, guess what happened? Zip! They shut their mouths. Look at one occasion. He was accused of healing a man on the Sabbath, and look what it says in Luke 14. He asked them, hey, by the way, which of you whose son or ox falls into a pit on the Sabbath day will not immediately pull him out? And they were unable to answer these questions. They were accusing him, you're not allowed to do that on the Sabbath day. He's healing a man who's crippled. They completely missed what the point of the Sabbath day was, which was love. And they missed it. And so he says, if your son or even your ox, this is a man, let's go to your ox. If your ox fell into a pit, wouldn't you work to get him out because you love the animal? Of course. And they were like, oh, he's right. All over the Gospels, whenever they accuse him, he asks a question. And look at how some of the responses. Look at Matthew 22. No one was able to answer a word. And from that day on, no one dared to question him any further. Luke 20, they did not dare to question him any further. And this is the point I'm hoping that you're understanding by this point. Like Paul and like Jesus, when you're confronted by people who don't understand your worldview because you have his worldview, or they can't comprehend why you make the life choices you're making because you get your marching orders from a different source, you'll find, I bet you'll find you can bring a hush to those triggers that you've pushed in somebody. If you just say, hey, look, can I just have an afternoon with you to help you understand why I see things the way that I do and where I get my worldview from? I'm telling you, that simple step of trying to clarify the confusion might be the difference between you being estranged from someone and having a real good relationship with someone. Continuing this dialogue with somebody who doesn't know the truth. I was in Florida with my family getting a little R&R after Labor Day, and we make it a routine to find a local Barnes & Noble wherever we go. And we go into Barnes & Noble, we all get a book, and we drink some coffee and just sit there for a few hours. Well, I was in Barnes & Noble in Orlando or somewhere around that area, and I took my laptop out and started working. I know, don't yell at me. I was working on my time off, but I started working a little bit on my laptop, and I plopped myself down in the philosophy section, and there's this little table there, and I'm drinking my coffee, and I'm alone, and this guy was standing there looking at books. His name was Al Sadler, I came to learn. And he turns to me, and he goes, excuse me, I can see you're working, but have you ever read this book? And it was a book written by Nietzsche. And I said, not all of it, but parts of it. Friedrich Nietzsche was a philosopher. I said, not all of it. It's really hard. I've read parts of it, usually excerpts in other books, because it's really hard. And he said, well, I just assume since you're sitting in the philosophy section, you might have read it. Maybe you know a little bit about this. And so I said, well, I study something that aims to get at the answers that philosophers also want to know. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, all of philosophy, it's just a discipline aimed at answering the question why. That's it. All philosophers, Aristotle, Plato, Nietzsche, all of them. They just want to know why. Why are we here? Why is this happening? Why am I like this? What's happening in the world? And I said, I study theology for the same reason. I want to know why according to God. And he said, oh, so you're studying theology. So that was an open door. We talked for 2.5 hours. And I started asking him, what are the questions actually that you're seeking that brought you into the philosophy section? No one's asked me that before. I said, Al, sit down. No, I can see you're working. I've already taken up enough of your time. I said, close my laptop. Al, sit down. Ashley starts to see what's going on. So she comes to the table behind and I can see her. She's praying. She can see what's happening. I said, Al, what's happening? I don't talk to anybody. I've been married for years and we don't even speak anymore. The best part of my day is when I go out on a bike ride because I just enjoy nature and I really don't have any reason to live. Somebody recommended that I come and study philosophy to try to figure out a reason to keep going on. So I said to him, do you know anything about Jesus? He's like, yeah, I know some basic stuff. I went to Catholic school. I said, has anybody ever showed you? I started to help him answer those questions one by telling him what Jesus said. And he said, no one has ever told me any of this. I started to help Al by first letting him know he wasn't alone. I sought the same things as him. We developed rapport. A connection was made. Then I started to help him understand we seek the same answers, you and me. And then I asked him, why do you believe what you believe? And eventually he said, I don't really know why I believe what I believe, which opened a door for me to show him what Jesus taught. But then I realized I can't get anywhere with this man in Barnes & Noble. He let me pray with him. And I said, Al, would you like to continue this dialogue with me? He said, I would love to do that. He said, this is the longest conversation I've had with anybody in a decade. And so he and I have exchanged some emails, and I've been helping him to understand a little bit more about Jesus. Friends, here's a man who I'd never met before. You have friends and family who you already have a rapport with. Ask some questions. The goal is to take someone who is an enemy of God and make them a friend of God. Can you say along with me, what a friend we have in Jesus? Will you say that with me? Hey friends, Pastor Luke just wanted to take a quick second to say thank you for watching the video. If you found it to be edifying and encouraging, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. For more videos and sermons like this, or to watch the full-length sermon, you can find it right here on our YouTube channel or by visiting our website, www.hopeoflbi.com.